like to begin by thanking all of you for your service to our country. One of the personal joys for me has, over the last 8 years, has been serving on this committee. The last 2 as chairman of the Readiness Subcommittee, and working with you to try and ensure our nation's security at a pretty difficult time. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to say to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, while I may have a difference of opinion with some of them on this issue, I know their concerns are heartfelt and are premised upon trying to do what's right for our country, and I certainly respect that, even though I may end up at a different place at the end of the day. I come from a state that honors our military. The American Legion is headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. My capital city, Indianapolis, was designed by Pierre L'Enfant, and there's a north-south axis of streets radiating off of a circle at the middle of our city. There is a huge war memorial on that circle. There is an American Legion Mall north of the circle where we have memorials honoring our war dead from every conflict we fought as a nation. Honoring our military, caring about our national security interests is part of Hoosiers' DNA. It's part of my DNA. We tend to come from a place where national security has to come first. And if you have competing values, well, you take care of your national security first, and if some other considerations, culture or otherwise, have to wait, well, that's just the way it is. But as I understand your testimony, Mr. Secretary, and your colleagues' testimony, we can make this change without impairing our nation's security. Is that a correct reading of this study and of your professional opinion?
The way I would answer that question, Senator, is to say that I would not sign the certification if I did not think we were safeguarding national security.
In fact, as I understand your testimony, other nations have made this change. And some of the concerns that my colleagues sincerely hold did not come to fruition in terms of retention or morale or effectiveness in combat and that kind of thing. Is that also a correct reading of your testimony?
I think so.
In fact, when we integrated the armed forces in the 1950s, some of these concerns had been raised, but were not realized following the integration of the armed forces along racial lines. Isn't that correct, gentlemen?
Well, as I indicated earlier, the organizational integration took place between 1948 and 1953. We did have problems, racial problems, inside the armed forces for a number of years after that. Ultimately, through discipline and training and professionalism, I think they've largely been eliminated.
Our national security has not been harmed by the integration of the armed forces. I'm sure you agree. I know you agree with that.
It's been enhanced.
Correct. And Admiral Mullen, in your exchange with my friend Senator Graham, I couldn't help but think that, you know, if we'd done polling back in the day, 1948, 1949, you would have found a diversity of opinion about the racial integration of the armed forces. And if a minority of people had objected following that line of logic, we wouldn't have integrated the armed forces. And so here's the point that I'm trying to make, and then, Secretary, I'll let you go. I've always felt that our nation is strongest and most secure when we pursue our nation's security consistent with our values to the extent that we can. I find, Admiral Mullen, I associate myself with your comments, and I assume, and I apologize I wasn't here for all the hearing, the thinking of your colleagues. There just seems to be something fundamentally wrong when we ask men and women to lay down their lives for our country, and yet they cannot be honest about who they are. There's something fundamentally wrong about that. And if we can pursue our nation's security without putting them or us as a country institutionalizing hypocrisy, I think America is stronger. We are a more just and secure country. And that's where I kind of come from this issue on. General, Mr. Secretary, that's just what I want to say. If you need to go, thank you. And again, it's been an honor working with you. General Ham, in your testimony to my colleague, Senator Webb, you indicated that to the extent we know, about 2 to 3% of the people who serve in the armed forces are gays and lesbians. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
There's no reason to believe that that figure has changed over time, is there? There's no way of knowing, but I assume that's kind of constant over time.
I don't know, sir. And the best we could do was try to get an assessment of where are we today.
Sure, but I guess the point I want to make, in all likelihood, there were gay Americans serving at Valley Forge. There were gay Americans at Gettysburg. There were gay Americans on Normandy Beach. There are gay Americans serving in Iraq and Afghanistan today. In all likelihood, that's probably true, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir, I think it's a very reasonable assumption.
There are probably gay Americans buried at Arlington Cemetery and in Normandy Beach, where I took my young sons a couple years ago. One of the most inspiring things you can possibly see. those rows of crosses and the American flag flying in the breeze, people who laid down their lives for our country. There are probably gay Americans buried there, aren't there?
I think it would be a reasonable assumption.
How do we say to them or to their families that we've honored their sacrifice, laying down their life, and yet if we knew who they were, not only would they not be buried there, they would have been drummed out of the armed forces?
Senator, my response to that would be based on the oath that we took, that all of us in uniform take, and that is that we support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That means we follow the law, and so we have to do that.
Well, I guess my point once again is, if there are Americans who are willing to lay down their lives for our country and make that kind of sacrifice, and we can enable them to be that kind of patriot without harming our national security, not only is it better for them, it is better for us and for our country. We are stronger, more noble, and more just with a policy like that. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your service. It's been a pleasure serving with you, and I think our country is in your capable hands. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Bayh.